Hello. Now, I have heard that you are all frightfully bored. I've also heard that many of you are very frustrated because you are trying to write and you are finding it very difficult because the libraries are closed and you can't go places, and so all your research is getting a little bit, well, derailed. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Laura Trevelyan and I am an explorer. So, I'm here today to tell you about some of the really wonderful ways that you can explore history through your computer, sitting in the safety of your house with a nice cup of tea, a couple of biscuits, and get all the research you need for your book done. So to start out with, this week we are going to have a look at the Australian National Archive and their First World War collection. So follow me and we'll have a look. So here we are on the National Archive's Anzac page, and this was created about nearly 10 years ago, about 6 years ago, for the centenary of the First World War, and it's a digital archive of everything. So looking at that front page, we're now had a look at where people come from. So looking at locations, you can put a location in here, and then so we put in Sydney, and then we have where people came from, where they signed up. And here we go to Katoomba, and you can go all the way down into the town. Going back here, we're having a look at some records. So these are records that are on the site. They're from multiple different places. You can see them. And here's one that is a diary. It's literally a diary of a serviceman. So it's a primary source. Primary sources are so good. And as you can see, we can actually read it. You can flick through the pages and read it. A lot of these, being digital files, aren't exactly the most legible things. They're written as private documents, not public ones. So I think that adds to it. Here we have a look at profiles, and back to having a look at records. So the profiles are profiles that have been already created where the archive had lots of information. And these are the records. So you click on different bits in there, different aspects of the army, and you can search for people. So here we go. We have the records, and I've searched Katoomba and having a look. So you just go down, you click on names. Some of them don't have records, some of them have not been digitized. So we go down, have a look. So if it wasn't digitized, that's what you get. This one, again, another one that wasn't digitized. It is a bit difficult for a while, but this one is digitized, and this is what you get. You get these records. They're the actual application to join the army, and you can flick through them. They can have anywhere between 1 or 2 pages or a big thick file, so they're quite useful. You can see where they came from, what they did for work, how old they were, what their next of kin. They've got huge amounts of information in them. Now I believe this young man was knocked back. He was determined unfit for service because of his poor eyesight. So that's this person's story. Then we go So there are lots and lots of pages. Some of the pages are just printed forms, others have actual information on them. Then once we go from there, this is another page of it. There are lots of pages through it. So again, we see that he was knocked back because of his eyesight in this. It also gives one of the other interesting, so he's 21, it also gives an idea of how big people were. People were a lot smaller. Then because I was getting so many dud files, you go to the side here and you can click on filters. So one of the things that I decided to filter out was, okay, I only want things that have a record attached to them, and that made searching it a lot easier. So I was able to find people who had a record, and then we could actually have a look at some of these records. This one is another one where you only have a little bit. He's a shorty, he's 5'5", and he was knocked back also as unfit because he had flat feet. So he's also very short, so looking at the times you can see where they're starting to get a bit desperate and sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're taking shorter people, they're taking people who they didn't take at the beginning of the war, so people are trying their luck. Some of them are just trying their luck. But height requirements, various different requirements got knocked back throughout the war as they got more and more desperate for people, because the war was going bad. Well, it was always going badly. It was going badly and there were lots of casualties, and it was starting to get a lot less popular as the war progressed. Now this one is really interesting. This guy's a young boy. He's only about 18, and he's got permission for this note is permission from his father to sign up. So that's a really fascinating thing to see in that record. And this is the thing about this, is there are all these stories. This is what we use as a novelist. We have the bare bones of a character, but then you get these little bits that make them really human, like needing their father's permission to sign up and needing parents' permission. And that, amazingly, that can be in the archives, in these records. Now this is a timeline to help give you a sense of where things are happening in the historical timeline, so that you can locate yourself if you're not a big history buff. Now I was putting in a particular person. This is a relative of mine. His name is Hugh Patrick Stapleton. I knew that they had a big archive. I also knew I had a photograph of him. So here is the original image of his entry. And so I signed up. I signed in, logged in, and then you can make contributions. You can add photographs that you have. They have to be legitimate, but you can add to the archive. You can transcribe things for the archive. So if you are a history person rather than just a novelist, then it makes it quite interesting to be able to contribute to the history of Australia by adding these things to the archive. So I had a photograph of him, and because I've logged in and registered, I was able to upload the photograph. It doesn't show the file that I was uploading it off there. And I was able to put it in, and so now when people look this up, they can see him, which is a pretty amazing thing to be able to do. So that is the National Archives Anzac archive. It is enormously useful for writers, and I would highly recommend it if you are a writer or historian or interested in that, to check it out. So now you've seen what is available on the Australian National Archive. Now it's very fascinating, really. I have used it in various different ways. And while you may not wish to build an entire story around a single person, a single record that you find in the archives, what it does tell you is a lot about, you can build a whole image of who were these people who were joining up, who were they, what sorts of jobs did they do, where were they joining up from. You get an idea of ethnicity, of religion, you get an idea of what was causing people to get knocked back, how did that change over time. It's really quite fascinating. And once you get a start, you may not want to tell a First World War story, but it does help you see, okay, so what were the men who joined up like? What were their age ranges? Who were then missing in the town? Who was then potentially missing for the rest of time, if the war record tells that? There are also just a snapshot of what sort of jobs did people have, where did they live, what did they look like. These things are really interesting and useful. So if you have time and interest, now whether you are a fiction or a non-fiction writer, this is a very useful resource, and I would strongly advise you to check it out should your project require it. Okay, so next time I see you, I'm going to help you with some other online resources, and we're going to have a look at the National Library's digital archive trove. That's really exciting. Love that one. Okay, until we see you again, I'll see you later. Now remember, like and subscribe, get yourself a bullet journal. There's a video back here somewhere in the depths. And maybe check out the creative writing courses. They also deal with research and ways to use research in your writing. They're still 75% off this week only. Sale ends on 31st of April. So I will see you later.